Good morning, everyone. As you know, snow is falling over much of our state, and if it hasn't reached you yet, it's probably going to get there soon. According to the meteorologists, this storm is moving a little slower than they had anticipated, but that means that the impacts on our state could be even greater because that storm's going to hang around a little longer. We're getting ready on the state level to get all the roads cleared as soon as possible and to keep people safe. And I want to urge residents, as I usually do in these type of events, I want them to be ready and I want them to stay off the roads unless absolutely necessary. We have our team here today who is responding to the storm. We have my Department of Public Safety Director, Secretary Eric Hooks, Transportation Secretary Jim Trogdon, Emergency Management Director Mike Sprayberry, the Commander of the North Carolina Highway Patrol Glenn McNeil, Brigadier General Todd Hunt of the National Guard, and we have Monica McGee from the Department of Health and Human Services who is signing for our deaf and hard of hearing. Nearly all of our state is under a winter storm warning. Some of it is under a winter storm advisory. But that means that nearly all of the North Carolina counties will be impacted by this storm. And that means you need to stay alert and stay informed. We know snow started falling in the west, and in the mountains they've seen up to 4 inches of snow. And we know that in central North Carolina we're going to get 4 to 6, but really only Mother Nature knows exactly how much. I know a lot of kids are excited out there, but we don't know exactly how much we're going to get. We do know that this is going to be a pretty significant snow event for a lot of the state. Cold temperatures tonight mean that tomorrow morning's commute will be dangerous, so watch out for that. But the good news is that the temperatures are expected to climb above freezing tomorrow and continue warming through the weekend. So hopefully most of the effects of this storm will melt away a lot earlier than the last storm. Of course, forecasts can change quickly, so I advise people to keep up with your local forecast. We've already taken several steps to get ready for this storm. We've activated our Emergency Operations Center and our regional coordination centers this morning to synchronize the storm response. We have here all of our partners, the Department of Transportation, the Highway Patrol, Emergency Management, the National Guard, and the public utilities. I declared a state of emergency yesterday for the entire state, and the state of emergency is to waive size and weight restrictions so that we can get equipment into places that may need help. And also it activates the price gouging law that the state has. Our state and local managers are in constant contact to address any needs that local communities have. And nearly all of our state's 115 school systems have either closed or adjusted their schedules because of the storm, and we know the kids are keeping up with that. The adverse weather policy is in effect for state employees. The mandatory state employees must continue to report to work because they perform essential job services, particularly related to the storm. Non-mandatory state employees working in storm-affected areas should use their discretion and stay in touch with their supervisors. If you have been out on the roads in the last day or two, you have likely seen Department of Transportation road crews working hard to pre-treat the roads with brine solution. Since Monday, they put down over 2 million gallons of brine on North Carolina's roads. And to give you a little more update on what they're doing, I'm going to turn it over to Secretary of Transportation, Jim Trogdon. Jim?
Thank you, Governor. The Department of Transportation started anti-icing operations on Monday and concluded that at the end of the day yesterday. During that time, our 1,200 employees and over 600 trucks applied the 2 million gallons of anti-icing or salt brine agent that the Governor mentioned in all 100 counties. Overnight, the snow started falling in the western part of the state between 8 and 10 p.m., and crews from the western part of the state all the way up through Winston-Salem placed an additional 5,000 tons of salt and sand and 200,000 additional gallons of salt brine on those roads in those areas. We had planned for the potential of this storm to impact almost the entire state, and today we'll be assessing where the accumulation is and can we move crews around from areas less impacted to the areas most impacted. So we're standing by to see what the actual accumulations are. Our recommendations is be careful today, especially if you went to work on your way home this afternoon, especially if you're in the Piedmont, because as temperatures fall rapidly this evening, travel conditions will get extremely hazardous. Thank you.
I want to thank the DOT crews for their great work. I was in Yadkin County and Forsyth County yesterday and visited with a number of them, and they have to go out under sometimes brutal conditions, very cold late at night, very dark, and they work very hard. So we thank them, and remember that you can make their jobs easier by staying off the roads if you possibly can. Snow's pretty, but don't be fooled. You don't have to brave the roads if you don't have to, and we don't want people to get in trouble. We know from our state troopers that accidents can happen when we have snow and ice on the road, and in the past few hours they've seen a slight uptick, particularly in the west. Our state troopers are marking any abandoned vehicles along the highway. They're first checking to see if anybody is in the vehicle who may need help. But then if the vehicle is impeding traffic, then they will move it to the shoulder of the road. I want Colonel Glenn McNeil, who is the commander of the Highway Patrol, to tell you a little bit about what the North Carolina Highway Patrol is doing. So Glenn?
Thank you, Governor. First of all, I'd like to thank all of our first responders and local law enforcement who has worked with the patrol over this early morning preparing for the storm. The Highway Patrol has allocated resources statewide as we continue to monitor the effects of this morning's snow. Troopers have been working throughout the morning responding to more than 546 collisions and 755 calls for services. Most of the calls received have been in the western parts of our state and also the Triad. Motorists are encouraged to monitor news reports pertaining to the roadway conditions throughout the day. If you must go out on the roadways, please make sure that you increase your following distances, monitor your speed, don't drive distracted, and plan for delays. Emergency responders are making every effort to respond to your calls for service as fast as we can without putting our own emergency responders at risk. We're asking everyone to please refrain from calling 911 or Star HP to ask for road conditions. Updated road conditions can be obtained by visiting drivenc.gov. Thank you.
Thank you, Colonel. We owe a great deal of gratitude to the men and women who brave the cold and the snow to keep doing their jobs. State troopers and first responders do an excellent job out there. While many North Carolinians are able to stay home and stay safe, those heroes are out there protecting us, and we're grateful for them. Just a few safety tips before I take questions. Watch your weather forecast and monitor it. Don't be on the roads unless you have to. If you must travel, make sure you keep a good distance behind the vehicle in front of you. Remember to check on neighbors and friends, particularly seniors. Also bring your pets indoors to make sure they're protected. If you need an alternative heat source in your home, we don't expect a lot of power outages. We've been in close contact with the utilities, and because this is not an ice event, hopefully there will not be many of them, but they are on the ready and they're monitoring things. But if your power does go out, don't use generators indoors or grills indoors. And you can follow the storm updates on Facebook and Twitter under NC Emergency and NC DOT. And you can download the Ready NC mobile app. It's a good app that gives you real-time information about what's happening out there, or as Colonel mentioned, drivenc.gov. We'll be glad to take any questions that you might have. Yes.
You said the storm is moving slower, so that means we could see more accumulation. With more accumulation, what in your plan specifically changed this morning?
Well, I think when meteorologists briefed us last night and this morning, they saw an increasing amount of snow that may hit central North Carolina and the Triad. And I think the only changes is that the DOT crews may need to do more plowing and more clearing of roads than they had planned to do earlier. We have the resources on ready. I think we're ready for any type of event that could potentially happen. They're out there already, and they're ready to go when necessary. They go for the primary roads first, and then the secondary roads next. And it's hopeful that they can get the roads cleared in a pretty quick fashion. Right, Jim?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. Okay. Yes.
It is, or at least it was in this general area, above freezing right now or previously, which means some water is accumulating in some places on the road. Do we have an idea what time that will start to freeze and create these patches of ice that might be of a concern?
You guys, Mike, you got an answer to that?
Temperatures are dropping right now. We expect them to get below freezing this afternoon. I can't give you an exact time, but we know that it's going to create hazardous conditions by those temperatures dropping. So that's why the governor's asking that if you don't have to be on the roads, let's stay off the roads. Thank you.
I think it's going to get into the teens tonight, so we know it's going to be really cold, and that water and snow can freeze over and cause significant problems, black ice and other hazards. Yes, sir.
One common denominator with some of the particularly bad snowstorms we've had in recent years is that many of them happened right during the day. People were already at work. When a lot of people woke up this morning, they looked out their window, they probably saw that the roads looked fine. Does that actually, in this particular case, concern you?
It does concern me, and that's one of the reasons why schools went ahead and closed, and we told people to stay off the road, because this storm is pretty intense, and there in some places that, and we're told by our meteorologist Katie Webster this morning, that it snows 1 inch an hour. So in a very short period of time, you could have a significant amount of snow. Even though it was very clear this morning, you get to work, and by the middle of the afternoon, we could be in a very difficult situation. So that's why we encourage people to stay off the roads this morning, even though it was clear, because the meteorologists were pretty confident that this snow was coming and that it was going to be a fairly significant event for us. And particularly when it happens so fast and the snow accumulates so quickly, then one thing we've seen before in the past in Raleigh is when people start seeing that, then everybody leaves work, and then there become significant traffic problems. And I know I was talking to the colonel today, they were more concerned about what was going to be happening this afternoon and evening than they were this morning. So if you can go home now, go ahead and go home from work, because it's going to get a little bit nasty out there. Yes. Get the mic down to Lenny there.
I know you mentioned that you will assess where the accumulation is and then maybe reposition your crews. Is that happening right now, or are you waiting for the snow to fall? Where do you see the crews spending most of their time?
I'm going to let Secretary Trogdon address that.
Yes, sir. Yes, so the projection right now is about 6 inches in the Piedmont area. Right now, we have relocated and redeployed 0 crews. All of our crews are organic to those counties that they work in. We're going to continue to do that because at this point, we'll still see the impacts being across the state. If for some reason we get less accumulation than the 1 inch we anticipate in eastern North Carolina, we'll be able to redeploy some of those crews if counties have 0 effects. We'll be able to redeploy those crews to assist those that had greater effects. So that's what we're assessing right now. But at this point, no one has been moved, no crews have been moved across the state.
It's somewhat unusual to have the entire state affected by a snow event in a short period of time. And as you can see, it snowed a little bit even in the very far west in the mountains. And this little band in the middle of eastern North Carolina will get the least. But then you go to the coast, and it's more a significant event in central coastal North Carolina. And we've been told that pretty strong winds and stormy seas out there. So people need to be careful all across North Carolina. Other questions? Thank you all very much.